Hey there, welcome to Film in the Blank. My name's Ian, I watch a lot of movies. Here's everything I watched this month. I started the month off with Predator Killer of Killers, written by Micho Robert Rutare and directed by Dan Trachtenberg and Joshua Wasong. This has a fantastic concept and execution, using the Predator to connect several different time periods and types of fighters into a surprisingly unified story of resilience and daring. It also benefits from particularly great animation that elevates the action of a normal Predator movie into something much more visceral and stylized. I maybe could have used a bit more to separate this from feeling like a miniseries and more like a proper film. I'm not sure if that's adding more to the last act or playing more with how the different segments are woven together, just something a bit more cinematic. 4 stars. Then I watched 1978's Superman the Movie, written by Mario Puzo, David Newman, Leslie Newman, and Robert Benton, and directed by Richard Donner. This was charming and entertaining, but I can't stop thinking about Lois Lane's arc in this. Spoiler warning, but in one human week, Lois Lane is mugged at gunpoint, is in a helicopter accident, falls from a skyscraper, is caught in a missile strike, is caught in a massive earthquake, has her car swallowed by a sinkhole, gets buried alive, is dropped from outer space, dies, and is resurrected. Damn girl, maybe write a news story about yourself. 3 stars. Up next, one of the sexiest films of all time, 1960's Purple Noon, written by René Clément and Paul Gigoff, and directed by René Clément. First of all, Jesus Christ, has anyone ever been hotter than Alain Delon in this? That look he gives Marge in the guitar scene could make me do anything. Purple Noon is the first film adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novel The Talented Mr. Ripley, and I'd argue it immerses you in the sweaty, murderous world of Tom Ripley better than any later version. The blazing cinematography and picturesque Italian backdrops help the film pop visually and emotionally, but it's Alain Delon in the beguiling lead role that grabs your attention and never lets it go. It's one of the best watches of the month for me, 4.5 stars. Next, Vroom Vroom and Zoom Zoom, it's F1, written by Aaron Kruger and directed by Joseph Kosinski. I'm a sucker for slick dad movies like this, and Joseph Kosinski certainly knows how to slick them up real good. I don't think anyone was doing particularly great work on either side of the camera, but it just works and goes down oddly smoothly. I'm sure for anyone at least halfway interested in cars, this movie is their new Roman Empire, and while it's certainly nothing close to that for me, I could see this being an entertaining rewatch down the line. 4 stars. Then another kind of racing movie, 1979's The Black Stallion, written by Melissa Matheson, Gene Roseberg, and William D. Whitliff, and directed by Carol Ballard. The first half of this was so flat out stunning that I, a 34-year-old father of 2, am now a certified horse girl. I couldn't fight it. It's a truly serendipitous melding of gorgeous cinematography, a beautiful locale, and great direction of 2 of the most notoriously difficult things to direct, children and animals. But once we leave the deserted isle and head back to America, the quality plummets. Never into bad territory, but firmly into styleless mediocrity. Not even an Oscar-nominated Mickey Rooney writing hay bales can help regain the sheer glory of the first half. 3.5 stars. Next, it's sacrilegious, but it speaks to me, The Phoenician Scheme, written and directed by Wes Anderson. I'll always be in the theater for each new Wes Anderson film because I know at the bare minimum I'm getting an impeccably crafted film with an incredible cast and Wes's one-of-a-kind visual style and charm. For me, The Phoenician Scheme was markedly better than 2021's meandering French Dispatch, but not as mesmerizing as 2023's stellar Asteroid City. The standout has gotta be Michael Cera in his scene-stealing supporting role, but overall I didn't think there was a weak link in that massive cast. 4 stars. Then, if at first you don't succeed, Triad, try again. It's 2005's Election, written by Yao-Ne Hoi and Yip Tin Shing, and directed by Johnny To. Johnny To is a director I've been trying to connect more with, and Election finally got me there. The film follows rival gang leaders who go scorched earth in their quest to possess the dragon-head baton that signifies the next Triad leader. I love how To uses violence in this, not as set pieces, but as specific tools to achieve goals in the story. I also thought it had a particularly strong ending with some powerful visuals that really drive home shrewd points about honor, determination, and mercy. 4 stars. Then Some Mistaken Identities in 1934's The Merry Widow, written by Ernest Vida and Samson Rafelson, and directed by Ernst Lubitsch. Lubitsch is known for his comedy, so I expected the humor to be the standout in this, but lo and behold it was the dancing and set design that walloped me. That said, the writing was still very strong, including my favorite line of the month, where in one scene a character is hurt when her romantic interest seemingly chooses to keep chasing after one-night stands instead of committing to her, and she looks at a room full of girls and says to him,
"Here they are. All your little tonight, and not a tomorrow among them."
Damn, that's a great line. 4 stars. Up next, some Stephen King with The Life of Chuck, written and directed by Mike Flanagan. The first act of this is one of the most stressful movie watching experiences I've encountered in a while, but stick with it because it blossoms into something far different and much more life-affirming before long. I appreciated the care that Maestro Mike Flanagan put into defining each section and blending tones. Some of his recent TV projects have featured some of the best writing and creative execution I've seen, full stop, and while this didn't blow me away like those did, it moved me and made me consider life differently like only good art can do. 4 stars. Then Never Underestimate Someone in Drag, 1969's The Damned, written by Luchino Visconti, Nicola Badalucco, and Enrico Medioli, and directed by Luchino Visconti. At its core, The Damned is a Nazi German version of Game of Thrones with some very morally questionable members of a family destroying themselves to gain control over their family's lucrative steelworks. Luchino Visconti is really good at turning characters that might be unlikable or hard to root for into figures that, at the very least, are incredibly intriguing to watch. If it was about 15 minutes shorter, I think it would be a home run for me, but still a very strong 4 stars. Then The Coolest Cat in the Casbah, 1937's Pépé le Moko, written by Jacques Constant and Henri Janssen, and directed by Julien Duvivier. Between this and 1946's Panic, Julien Duvivier knows how to make films that feel small and personalized, but also sweeping and grand. Pépé le Moko, played by the enamoring Jean Gabon, is a notorious thief hiding out in the labyrinthian Casbah of Algiers as the authorities work fruitlessly to flush him out. It's a film rich in symbolism and alluring characters, and has some of the most spine-tingly shots of eyes around. It's a magnificent film that definitely doesn't need its nachos reheated anytime soon. 4.5 stars. Then Pépé le Moko's reheated nachos, 1938's Algiers, written by John Howard Lawson and directed by John Cromwell. I really don't understand the point of making essentially a shot-for-shot English language remake, including reusing footage from the original in several parts. If you're gonna do that, at least try and do it better. 3 stars. Then The Bitch is Back, It's Megan 2.0, written and directed by Gerard Johnston. When the opening shot of this was set somewhere on the Turkey-Iran border, I got worried that the simple charm of the original didn't transfer to the sequel. When they had a 14-year-old say Allison Williams was dressed like a Portuguese prostitute, I thought that was an oddly specific, maybe slur that showed they're just throwing whatever the fuck they want at the wall to see what sticks. And when the credits finally rolled, I felt nothing. See you for the threequel, Megs. 2 stars. Then I watched 2011's Pina, written and directed by Wim Wenders. Pina is Wim Wenders' documentary about the work and technique of German dancer and choreographer Pina Bausch. Originally released in 3D because Wim Wenders is a maniac, the exuberant doc was conceived and shot with Pina's guidance before her sudden death. Wenders refocused the film to serve as a tribute to both Pina, the dancer, and Pina, the human, and the result is a dynamic, entrancing trip into the mind of a singular artist. Some really great modern interpretive dance in this. 3.5 stars. Then another visual feast from David Lean, 1965's Dr. Zhivago, written by Robert Bolt and directed by David Lean. Dr. Zhivago was in the group of dense, book-to-screen adaptations with a hefty runtime that I've avoided like the plague for years, but knowing it's a David Lean film finally made me curious enough to check it out. And it's a stunning film visually, with Lean and cinematographer Freddie Young shooting Spain, Finland, and Canada as a stand-in for the Soviet Union beautifully. Julie Christie and Omar Sharif are a great lead pairing, and the story felt grand enough to warrant the long runtime. 3.5 stars. Up next, another film in the summer of Pedro Pascal, Materialists, written and directed by Celine Song. With Materialists, Celine Song is a cinematic mechanic taking apart an old classic car piece by piece, holding each part up and asking, do we really need this? Before reassembling everything that's left into a modern, sleek version of the genre. I really loved the dreamy score and Celine's shot compositions. She always has a full frame of interesting foregrounds, middle grounds, and backgrounds that give the mainly conversation-focused scenes a beautiful canvas to build from. Celine Song keep giving me gorgeous, soulful films about love that are light on villains and heavy on string lights, and I'm a beggar for you. 4 stars. Then future Oscar nominee America Ferrera's film debut, 2002's Real Women Have Curves, written by George Lavu and Josefina Lopez, and directed by Patricia Cardoso. This is a spunky little family drama with a dash of teen romance. The bones are there enough that I wish it said a bit more instead of prioritizing the emotionality of most scenes, but solid. 3.5 stars. Then another inductee into the pantheon of iconic nude scenes in cinema, Misericordia, written and directed by Alain Guiraudie. At its core, Misericordia is a sex-obsessed farce. However, everything from the tone to the cinematography to the performances are played so straight down the middle you'd be forgiven if you didn't realize that by the time the credits roll. The film follows unemployed Jeremy, who returns to his small town following the death of his mentor, the town baker. He soon gets drawn back into oddly intimate connections with several people in the town with a good dose of violence mixed in, and the story goes on from there. There's not a ton of nudity, but when it's used, it smacks you over the head with equal parts humor and shock. I can't say it was an altogether pleasant viewing experience, but knowing what I know now about the film, a rewatch would probably raise my score quite a bit. For right now, 3.5 stars. Next, the sequel to Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise, 1927's Sunrise, written by Carl Mayer and directed by F.W. Murnau. First off, fellas, don't you hate when you can't figure out which bae to strangle, so you just lurch out and try to strangle both? We've all been there, and Sunrise is here to make us feel seen. It's a particularly beautiful film that takes some unexpected turns in the story and uses its oddly structured narrative to deliver on the emotion the title alludes to. It's also one of 3 films Janet Gaynor won the very first Best Actress Oscar for, and the only film to ever win the Oscar for Best Unique and Artistic Picture, which is somehow different from Best Picture. 4.5 stars. Then Start Running, It's 28 Years Later, written by Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, and directed by Danny Boyle. Nobody shoots things like Danny Boyle does. He distills his films down into their purest version, whatever that may be for each film, and then does everything he can to shoot the films according to that pure blueprint. He didn't just settle for replicating his original shooting style for 28 Days Later. Instead, he ventured into new territory with some truly erratic editing that hits a new sweet spot between the original's trademark style and modern existential horror movie editing more broadly. It also features an amazing soundscape that Boyle uses to build pressure perfectly, which really comes in handy with that rather slight story. 3.5 stars. Then I watched 2000's The Gleaners and I, directed by Agnes Varda. Agnes Varda is one of the truest champions of the value of people. Whether it's a doc or a narrative film, she has this unshakable commitment to portraying all human life as having dignity, as deserving of the camera's attention. She really sees people for who they are. But my absolute favorite thing about the couple Varda docs I've seen is how she introduces the people she interviews as just totally normal people, before at the last second coloring them with some unhinged detail like they've worn nothing but white for 25 years, or they're secretly a group of raccoons in a trench coat disguised as a person. Nobody gets cinema quite like Agnes did. 4 stars. Then a film painfully lacking in bananas, 1971's Bananas, written by Woody Allen and Mickey Rose, and directed by Woody Allen. This had some decent silent movie-esque gags, but it's very evident early on that Woody is no Buster, Harold, or Charlie. His weaselly franticness doesn't have the necessary warmth that endears you to his character, and the strangeness of the world around him isn't defined well enough to color the rest of the film as anything beyond generic weirdness. 2.5 stars. Next, Hope You Like Yellow, it's 1984's The Element of Crime, written by Lars von Trier and Niels Vorsel, and directed by Lars von Trier. The Element of Crime is a delectably untethered neo-noir that feels like the best parts of Memento, Blade Runner, and Seven, which is a big yup for me. It is very self-indulgent and light on hand-holding through some of its most inscrutable parts, so my fiancé wasn't a big fan, which I totally get. It just scratches that specific heady psychological thriller itch for me, and Lars von Trier makes it a visually arresting ride along the way. 4.5 stars. Then my Bergman for the month, 1953's Summer with Monika, written by Per Anders Fogelström and directed by Ingmar Bergman. Bergman lulls you in with the precocious first act, giving you the impression that Summer with Monika is just a beautiful film about summer love. And while it is a beautiful film about summer love, Bergman is Bergman and turns the second half of the film into a starkly cautionary tale that packs in as much angst as emotionless scheming. There's not a ton here for me compared to other Bergman films, but I at least appreciated his take on this genre of film. 3.5 stars. Then I watched 1968's Coogan's Bluff, written by Herman Miller, Dean Reisner, and Howard Rodman, and directed by Don Siegel. I've gotta hand it to the writers of this for somehow including absolutely no character development for a single character. Clint Eastwood's Arizona lawman snarls and growls his way through New York City as he tries to recapture a fugitive. For some reason this requires him to have sex with like 6 different women, my favorite of which has gotta be a scene where Clint punches a guy for groping a woman against her will, then the woman gets mad at Clint and makes him apologize to the guy he punched, and then Clint starts groping her against her will until she gives in. Big yikes. Special shout out to Lalo Schifrin for writing a score that had oodles more character and charisma than the film itself. 2 stars. Then some incontrovertible evidence that mansplaining should be a federal crime, 1960's Never on Sunday, written and directed by Jules Dassin. This didn't have the panache of other Dassin films for me, but Melina Mercouri is a firecracker anyway as the prostitute an entire Greek town functions around. She keeps things surprising and lively so the main philosophical debate at the center of the story can play out without much dragging. For a peppy jaunt through Greece about free will, Never on Sunday has got you covered. 3.5 stars. Up next, my Kurosawa for the month, 1948's Drunken Angel, written by Akira Kurosawa and Kenosuke Uekusa, and directed by Akira Kurosawa. Everyone knows the best doctors are sloppy drunks, but what many people don't know is that it's even better if the patient is also a sloppy drunk who can't stop themselves from physically attacking their doctor repeatedly. Thankfully, Kurosawa is here to educate the masses with this nice, little too straightforward addition to his filmography. Still, it is the first project Toshiro Mifune and Kurosawa worked on together, leading to one of the most iconic pairings in cinema history, so it's definitely a consequential film nonetheless. 3 stars. Next, 1970s Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, written by Esther Krumbaczava and Jaromil Juriš, and directed by Jaromil Juriš. Valerie and Her Week of Wonders is a lot of things. It's a campy Czechoslovakian fairy tale, it's the Citizen Kane of bad teeth jump scares, and it's a film that isn't super concerned with having a clear plot. Instead, it's focused on bringing the murky, fantastical world of the film to life, which I'd argue it does pretty successfully. It just didn't have the characters or emotional resonance for me to go much further than being a spooky 73-minute light breeze. 3 stars. And I finished the month with 1987's Cry Freedom, written by John Briley and directed by Richard Attenborough. Denzel snagged the first of his so far 10 Oscar noms with his supporting role in this as South African activist Steve Biko, and rightfully so because he's great. But I had the same problem with this as I did with fellow 80s apartheid drama A Dry White Season. Both have extremely rich subject matter, but both relegate the storylines of the actual activists to the back burner in favor of more conventionally appealing storylines centered on white bystanders. When the film about the activism of Steve Biko earns the actor playing Steve Biko a supporting Oscar nom rather than a lead, I'd maybe give the screenplay a couple more drafts. 2.5 stars. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these movies? Any others I should check out? Do you dress like a Portuguese prostitute? Also stay tuned for other great commentary videos, reviews, video essays, and more. You can check me out on Letterboxd at Cineramadome24 or on TikTok at Film in the Blank. I appreciate you liking and subscribing. See you next time.